Hey, what's up, Encounter family? Hey, this Sunday we kicked off our new series that is going to carry us through our time of fasting and prayer for the next 3 weeks. And I was sharing all about what it means to abide in Jesus. And this word abide means to remain, to stay. And I was talking all about the power of staying connected to Jesus throughout our day, of letting our day be filled with sacred spaces where we're turning our attention onto God, connecting with Him, being still and being aware of God's presence and aware of ourselves. And just what an incredible difference this can make in keeping us connected to Jesus as we go throughout our days, since He's our source. And so to kind of add to our message, if you didn't get to listen to it, check it out from this past Sunday on our podcast or our YouTube. But I wanted to supplement the message with a reading this week. So if you have a few minutes to hang around and listen to this reading, this comes from a book called The Emotionally Healthy Discipleship by Peter Scazzero. Our elder team just read it together. It's a great book. And he has a chapter called Be Before You Do. And it really clicks in with this idea of abiding that we've been talking about. And so I want to just read it to you. It's going to take a couple minutes, but it talks about two different ways of going through our days. And maybe for you, this is about a leader going through their day with meetings and board things. But maybe for you, if you're a mom or a mechanic or a landscaper or whatever your day looks like, you can be thinking as I read this about what your day could look like if you were connecting with Jesus throughout your day and how it could bring your anxiety level down and bring peace and joy into your day. So I want to read this to you. So Peter says, too many followers of Jesus are chronically overextended and doing more for Jesus than their inner life with Him can sustain. They have too much to do and too little time and say a default yes to requests and opportunities without carefully discerning God's will. Overloaded and depleted constitute normal for their lives. The notion of a slowed down spirituality or slowed down discipleship in which their doing for Jesus flows out of their being with Jesus is a foreign concept. But what does this look like in everyday life? What's the difference between a doing for leader and a being with leader or person? Perhaps the best way to describe the difference is to invite you into two versions of a typical morning for a leader named Carlos. Carlos, the doing leader. So this is story number one. Carlos wakes up at 6:30 a.m. to shower, dress, and spend a few quick minutes with God in prayer and scripture before waking up his two sons, ages 10 and 7, for school. He's missed dinner last night with his family in order to meet with the treasurer about aligning next year's budget to their new strategic plan. Then his evening training session for small group leaders finished an hour late. By the time he got home, everyone was already in bed. Yikes. He's sensitive to the fact that it was probably a stressful evening for his wife, Sophia. Cooking and cleaning up dinner, supervising homework, and getting the two boys to bed is a lot to manage, even when they are both home. Feeling guilty, Carlos puts his best energy into carrying the parenting load this morning. I'm sure Sophia will appreciate that, he assures himself, and maybe it will make up for getting home late last night, hopefully. However, the atmosphere at the breakfast table is tense. Sophia is clearly annoyed. Carlos avoids eye contact. He finds tension and conflict between them overwhelming. The boys need to leave for school soon anyway, he thinks to himself. I'll call her at lunch and let her know she's in my thoughts and prayers. Fortunately for Carlos, Sophia teaches first grade at their son's school, so the three of them leave the house together shortly after breakfast. Once they leave, Carlos hurriedly gathers up his laptop and some files for the 9 o'clock meeting with his team. Oh Lord, please let the traffic be light today, he prays as he walks out the door. How many of us pray that? Once in the car, Carlos scribbles some last-minute notes from the meeting on the back of one of the file folders. Although he drafted an agenda the day before, the 20-minute commute to the church always offers space for new ideas to percolate. He set the file folder on the passenger seat in case he has a chance to make additional adjustments to the agenda at long traffic lights. Carlos likes to arrive first thing to the meeting, but traffic is slightly heavier than usual. He decides to drive more aggressively. 15 miles an hour over the limit is acceptable, he rationalizes, but just in case, he keeps a lookout for police cars. When he pulls into the parking lot, his phone rings. It's the church administrator reminding him that his report for the board meeting is due at 4 this afternoon. I'm on it, he exclaims confidently. He's scheduled time later in the day to write the report. It won't take long, he thinks. I know what I need to say. I just need to organize my thoughts and type them out. Before getting out of the car, he responds to a text message from his executive assistant and takes a look at his social media accounts. He gives into the temptation to interact with those who've commented on his recent post for fear of alienating any of his followers. Carlos arrives at the meeting at 8:58 a.m., feeling harried but smiling warmly, welcoming his team into the room. He asks Sarah to open in prayer. Then they begin discussing the meeting agenda items. Sounds like a pretty normal morning, right? But there's another way. This is Carlos, the being leader. So this is the second part of the story. Carlos wakes up at 6:30 to shower, dress, and spend 20 minutes with God before waking up his two sons, ages 10 and 7, for school. Instead of using his quiet time to read through 4 chapters of scripture, because he's following a plan to read the Bible in a year, he starts with 5 minutes for silence and stillness before God. That's interesting. He feels a low-level anxiety in his body. He becomes aware. Having arrived home late last night and anticipating a full day of meetings ahead, he breathes in and out deeply, inviting God's love to fill him. He surrenders his will to God's will. He takes several minutes to read through Psalm 130, prayerfully meditating on different phrases. He also offers each meeting of his day to God, one at a time, asking for God's wisdom and leadership. Maybe you could do that with each part of your schedule of your day. He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath with 5 minutes remaining. Something is bothering him about leadership training meeting that ended an hour late last night. He opens his journal and makes the following notes. Leadership training meeting. I felt drained and depressed afterward. Unsure why. Did we have to go that extra hour? As he gets up from his chair, he makes a commitment to journal about this again tomorrow. What might God be saying to me through this? He glances again at the agenda for his 9 o'clock team meeting. He makes 2 adjustments. To start with silence, as he needs it himself, and to get feedback on the previous night's training meeting. He also thanks God that his first meeting tomorrow is not till lunchtime and that Friday is their family Sabbath. Since both Carlos and Sophia work full-time and are raising 2 sons, they have a weekly planning meeting on Sunday evenings along with regular check-ins as needed. Because of that, so he's aware of how his week's going to go and connected with his wife. Because of that, Carlos had rescheduled his budgeting meeting with the treasurer to a different time so he could be home for dinner with his family. Yet Carlos feels some tension at the breakfast table. He becomes aware of his own anxiety as well as his desire to run from conflict. He wonders if Sophia is annoyed with him about getting home late last night. Notice he's aware. He's turning his awareness. Carlos establishes eye contact with Sophia. How are you? He asks. Is everything okay? No, it's not, she replies. I really wish you would have called me last night when you realized the meeting was going late. It affected me badly because I had a painful phone call from Maya in my small group. She told me she's leaving our group, but she wouldn't say why, and it's really bothering me. Carlos feels his body tense up. Part of him wants to run away from their conversation or justify why it would have been so awkward to call her, but he prays a quick prayer. Lord, help me. When Sophia turns away to do the dishes, Carlos moves towards her and says, Tell me more, Sophia. What happened? She stares for another 5 minutes, opening up about why the phone call from Maya was so upsetting. Will you please forgive me for not calling you last night? Carlos asks. It was insensitive on my part. Sophia nods and smiles. This is really important, Carlos says, and I want to hear more, but we both have to leave in a few minutes. Can we talk later after you get out of school this afternoon or after dinner without distractions? That would be nice, she replies. They agree on a time. Carlos hugs Sophia before gathering his laptop and a couple of files and then walks to his car to drive to church. He knows he will arrive in plenty of time, even if there's traffic. He drives the speed limit and prays for Sophia. He's already finalized an agenda, and there's no need to take notes at stoplights for his 9 o'clock team meeting. When Carlos pulls into the parking lot, his phone rings. It's the church administrator reminding him that his report for the board meeting is due at 4 this afternoon. No problem, Carlos says. I'll have it to you by noon. He's already written multiple drafts and simply wants to read it through one more time after his morning team meetings. Once he parks, he thinks about checking social media and text messages, but decides not to. He knows this kind of multitasking distracts him from being present to his team and from knowing what God might want to do at their meeting. Carlos steps into the meeting room at 8:58 and welcomes everyone as they wander into the team meeting. He's excited about beginning a time of silence and a reading of Psalm 130 from his devotional time earlier, and also hearing his team's perspectives on last night's training meeting. Every aspect of Carlos's day is different because of his commitment to being before doing, or as we've been saying, his commitment to abiding. A person who practices being before doing operates from a place of emotional and spiritual fullness. deeply aware of themselves, others, and God. As a result, their being with God is sufficient to sustain their doing for God. So I know that was a little bit long. If you're still with us, thanks for sticking around. But hey, I just hope that this kind of opens some practical avenues for thinking about what your days look like and maybe where some of the spaces are that you can choose to turn your awareness towards God, create a sacred space inside of yourself for his presence to inhabit, for you to be still and hear his voice and meditate on his word. So yeah, God bless you guys. Looking forward to what he's going to do in this season.